Ooh, that looks tasty. Folks, today the Hungry Gamer is back with another how to play video, and today we are learning how to play Kleos from Azure Horizon Games and Gigamech, and designed by Jim Cavanaugh. Now, what this game is it is a lightly asymmetric 1 through 5 player game in which you are taking on the role of one of 5 different Greek gods, and then using their champions and various minions to try to win this contest set up by Zeus to be the patron god of this new city here. And what's going to happen is it's going to be a 5-day kind of battle royale to see who it is that is going to be the winner. Now, very quickly, let's talk about all the components that you have here. Right here, I have out 2 of the player boards. There are actually 5 of them, but we have 2 of them here. We have the Epic Monster deck, which will go right here onto the Epic Minion space, Epic Minion deck, not Monster deck. We have all of the Fates cards right here, which go into the Fates. You'll notice Hades here, that is where all the discards are going to go, otherwise that stays empty at the beginning of the game. We have all the Zeus card, which goes right here, where it says Zeus. This is the day tracker, so that will just go right here on number 1. This here is the Blessing of the Gods token, and we'll just set that right here for now until someone actually has it. And out here we have our dice, and what you see here is one minor expansion that is a purchase separately, which are these little monster manticore meeples. I challenge you to say that 3 times fast. And these are additional purely aesthetic things that you can have, and I'll be using them because, well, I have them and they're very cool, but you can play the game simply with all the hoplites here, little hoplite meeples. That is actually all you need. But for each of the different players, you have a different color ring base for the champion, and you have the scoring token here. Then you have your different hoplite meeples. Up here, we have our first player marker, and then here we have the 5 different gods. And we have Athena, Ares, Artemis, Hermes, and Dionysus. Additionally in the game, we'll have this lovely little card here which tells you kind of the complexity of each god, roughly what they do, and just kind of gives you an idea of what it is that you're looking at as you're choosing your gods, which obviously you'll do at the beginning of the game. And you can see here that each god also, in addition to their champions, has their own little deck of cards. Now, for the purposes of this how to play video, I'm going to set up a 2-player game, though you can go to the end of the video, check out the timestamps to find out how the solo game plays as well. And for this, I will be using Athena right here with her champion of Hercules, and I will use Artemis and her champion of Atalanta. And I'll move everything out of the way, and then we'll move on to how to actually set the game up now that you've gotten this far. So now we are ready to continue with the setup. First thing is you'll take each mini of the champion and you'll snap the colored base on there like so. Then you'll take the scoring marker, which is marked with the S, and then place that down here on the S on the scoring track, which goes around the board. And then simply put your other meeples off to the side. Next thing that happens is you're going to put out your personal temples. Now, depending on the number of players, that'll determine which of these 5 locations you're able to use. In the 2-player game, you have one right here and the other here. In a 3-player game, you would use this one, and this one, and so on, and you can just check the rulebook to see exactly where it is you're supposed to place out your temples in that situation. Then each player will take their champion and place it on their temple. Next, you'll go through your cards, and you're going to pull out 2 cards in particular. First, you'll pull out your God card, which is simply giving you what your starting cards are. You'll pull out your champion card, and then whatever cards it tells you to pull out based on your starting deck. In this case, I need to start with the Aegis and Athena's Owl. So that would be this card here, and this card here. All the rest of my cards, I'll take and shuffle up. I'll put my deck right here, and I'll place these 2 cards that I'm already starting with right here. I then will take my champion, in this case Heracles, place that right here where it says Champion Minion. And then I can place my God card just to the side so I can remember who I am and what I'm doing. And then I'll do the exact same with Artemis on this side. And the next thing is both players will draw 4 cards from the Fates deck. And I'll flip some of these out so you can see what's in the deck before I just create my 2 hands. Now this is a good sample of what you'll find in the Fates deck. You'll have cards like the Ambrosia here, which are simply an act of the gods, which will allow you to do something or take some kind of bonus action. You'll find cards like Marked by the Gods, which in this case is a curse. There's also cards that are blessings, and they'll have some kind of effect that you'll put on an individual minion. A blessing you'll put on one of your particular minions, and a curse you'll put on an opponent's minions. And I'll say that a curse can never be placed on a champion minion. Then you'll have monsters and heroes. And in general, if you have the Manticore Meeples, you'll be using the heroes for the ones that are listed as hero, and you'll be using the monster for ones that are listed as monsters. And right now I want to show you just a couple of different things that you'll see on the various minions, and this will matter as we get later into the game. The first is we have this symbol down here at the bottom, and that means monstrous offering. And so what that means is you can literally feed these to anything that is a monster. So this manticore here could eat this nymph, in which case we'd place it just underneath like that, and it would get a bonus right there. And of course, what those bonuses mean will make sense in just a bit. Additionally, there's ones with these symbols here, and these can be used as mounts. So instead of having the manticore eat the nymph, I could have the nymph riding the manticore, or however it is that you would like to do that. I do need to point out that each monster can only have a single monstrous offering put on it, and each hero can only ride a single mount, though there are blessings and other things that you can get to kind of stack up and make uber powerful heroes. So what will wind up happening is you'll take your 4 cards, and you're going to add those to the 2 cards that you drew out of your divine deck to start the game, and that will be your starting hand. Now, then from there, you're going to move into what is called Daybreak. And this is a simultaneous action. And it's very simple. What's going to happen is each player will draw 1 card from their divine deck and add it to their hands. And then you will populate the islands. Now, I will say that the setup does tell you to do this as part of the initial setup. I have put it here instead. I do find that it gets the rhythm going a little bit better if you do that during Daybreak on the first day. However, you can certainly fill these in prior to that if that is your preference, or if you want to actually follow what the rulebook says. And what you'll see is each one of these is a various legend from Greek mythology, be it the Pegasus there, the Minotaur there, or perhaps the Nemean lion here. And these are going to be different minions that you're going to be able to recruit to your particular side in this contest. And the other thing that you would then do on days 2 through 5 only is move the day marker over 1. And as you can guess, when you would move back to the 1, that will be the end of the game. And the last thing that would happen on days 2 through 5 is the first player marker would rotate to the next player around the table. Then we're going to move into the play phase, and the play phase is done individually. What's going to happen there is this is your chance to play any cards from your hand that you would like. Now this could include minions, this could include acts of the gods, and so on and so on. So in this case, let's go ahead and do Artemis's play phase. So in this case, we're going to take the Hounds of Artemis, and we're going to play that right here as minion number 1. Then since it is a monster, I will go through, I will find the number 1 right here, and I will place that out onto the temple next to my champion. And then we're also going to play another monster. We're going to play our Manticore, and we're going to go ahead and feed our nymph to our Manticore. So we'll just slide that right under it like so. And we'll take our number 2 Manticore here, and again, we'll put that out onto our temple next to our champion. And for our third thing, we're going to go ahead and play our Hounds of Artemis. And so we'll place that out. And interestingly enough, we have a third monster minion. And again, we'll place that also out onto the temple. And the last thing that we're going to do is we're going to play our Ambrosia, which is simply going to let us draw 1 card. Now, every single card after it's been played will then get placed into Hades, like so. Whether that be a killed hero, whether that be an act of the gods, whether it be something from your divine deck, everything winds up in Hades at the end. So that will have allowed us to draw another card from our divine deck, which in this case is the Chosen Hunter, which is a blessing. And what that's going to do is it's going to give whatever gets played on the keyword hunter and +1 defense. And I'm going to explain in just a little bit what that means, but for now we'll just go ahead and we're going to place that onto our manticore. So now our manticore has both eaten a nymph and is a chosen hunter of Artemis. Then once that's done, then Athena will have a chance to play any cards that Athena would like to play. So I'll go ahead and do that, and we'll see what it is that we have. And so where we are after Athena's played is Athena simply played a simple Hoplite Warrior, which is right here, and another Hoplite Warrior. However, that Hoplite Warrior is riding a Manticore, so it is mounted, gaining the Swift ability and a bonus, and also has been favored by Athena. And so what that means is that this particular warrior both gains the favor of the gods, and I'll explain what that does in a little bit, but we'll just put that right there, and immediately gets to take an action, which in this case is simply going to be a move action. We'll go 1 and 2. Now that's going to take us into our action phase, and each one of your minions or heroes is going to get to take 2 actions. Now, as you saw, I took 1 action due to the card that I played previously, and you'll note that I almost made a mistake. This is an act of the gods, so this also goes to Hades there. Now you'll note that when I took my free action, I moved 2 spaces instead of 1. And that is because this particular character, because of the mount that has been given, is swift. And so that means the very first action of its turn that a minion takes that allows it to move, it can move 2 spaces instead of 1. Now since it was a free out of turn action, I was able to move 2 spaces. We'll also see what hunter means, which is something that I pointed out earlier. Now that means that the bonus that was given by the card, in the case of the Manticore controlled by Artemis, that was a +1 defensive stat. And they only get that bonus if they are the only minion of their team in a particular location. And then again, we'll see Heroic Mount and Monstrous Offering down below. Now, in addition to simply doing movement actions, minions are also able to do an attack action. And so, just for our understanding, we will assume that Hoplite here has moved into this space with the Manticore. Now for this, we will assume that our Hoplite has moved into that space, which is already occupied by the Golden Hind of Artemis. We'll put both of their cards out here so we can see what's going on. Now, let's talk about how combat works. The attacking player is going to get to roll all of their dice first, and the attack stat is very simple. It is the stat with the sword next to it, and that's going to tell you how many dice you're going to roll. In this case, the Hoplite Warrior is going to roll 3 dice, then plus 1 more die because of its mount, meaning it will roll a total of 4 dice. While the Hounds of Artemis here are actually going to roll 7 dice. Now it's important to note that there are no hit points in this game. Any minion that is defeated is killed and sent to Hades. The only exception to that are the champions. Champions can never be killed. If they're defeated, they simply get respawned at their temple. Now what's going to happen is the Hoplite Warrior is going to roll its attack. And what it's looking for is to equal or beat the defensive value of the Hounds of Artemis, in this case, a 4. Now when they roll, they are looking for the sword symbol. For every sword symbol they roll, that is a success. A blank is simply a miss, and this symbol here shows the same symbol as the favor of the gods. If the minion rolling the dice has the favor of the gods like this, then this will count as a success. If they do not, like the Hounds of Artemis, then it will count simply as a miss. And here they would roll their dice, and in this case they have a single success that does not match or beat the defense value of the Hounds of Artemis, so the Hoplite Warrior does not kill it. Then the Hounds of Artemis would get to make their counterattack, which is done exactly the same. They would roll the dice, and in this case, they have 1, 2, 3 successes. They do not have the favor of the gods, so that one does not count. And you'll see that 3 successes is enough to kill the Hoplite Warrior. So the Hoplite Warrior meeple will be removed from the board, and both the Hoplite Warrior and its mount would be sent to Hades. And for the victory, Artemis would receive a single point. And now's a good time to point that had Artemis defeated Heracles, then she would have gotten 2 points instead. There is one more thing that could have happened during that attack. So we'll rewind and we'll look at that. If you recall, I said you're trying to match or beat the defensive value. Now let's pretend for a moment that the Hounds of Artemis were attacking the Hoplite Warrior. And let's say that they had rolled this right here. They had rolled a hit on every single die. Since they have beaten the defensive value by at least 3, in this case they've beaten it by 4, they have slaughtered their opponent. And And slaughtering the opponent means two things. The first thing it means is you get one extra victory point, so in this case they would get 2 points, just like they had killed a champion. And the Hoplite Warrior would not get a chance to do its counterattack. I will also point out here that champions are never able to be slaughtered. So you can defeat a champion by 1, or you can defeat a champion by 8, and you'll still only get 2 points, and the champion will get its chance to hit you back. There is one other thing that can happen. Let's pretend that we started like this, and instead of making an attack on our Hounds of Artemis, the Hoplite Warrior decided it wanted to move right there. This will give the Hounds of Artemis a single attack of opportunity, meaning they could simply roll all of their dice one time, in this case, failing to kill the Hoplite Warrior. Now, had the Hounds of Artemis matched the defense, then, just like before, these cards would have gone to Hades, and the Hoplite Warrior would have been defeated. Now, there is, if you're looking at the cards here, 2 more stats here that we haven't talked about. And this stat here has to do with recruiting new heroes, but the bottom stat is called the Tactics stat. And so, for the sake of our argument, let's assume that we also had a second Hoplite Warrior right here. Let's assume that we had this Hoplite Warrior here already in this hex before the second one moved in and made its attack. Now, this attacking Hoplite Warrior right here, which would normally only have an attack stat of 3, would get to add this tactics bonus to its value, meaning instead of rolling 3 dice, it would roll 3 plus 2, or 5 dice, thus giving it a significant advantage as it tries to kill the Hounds of Artemis, though unfortunately for it, it failed right here. Now there is one more thing that can possibly happen. There are various Acts of the Gods cards, like this Twist of the Fates, that may cause a reroll, or each individual god may have other cards that can be played immediately that just might change what happens here. This is also a good time to simply remind you that when you are calculating your attack and defense stat, you need to make sure you're looking at any mount or monster's offering that a minion has, plus any blessings or curses that have been placed on them. Now, the next thing that I'll quickly point out is the game does come with a built-in way to track your action. You'll notice that as you take actions, it has a spot for you to slide the card up, and that tells you how many actions you have remaining. Now, the last action that you might take is you might go and try to recruit an epic minion. And to do that, you'll have to make your way to the port, and then take a move action to travel to any of these Greek isles. And let's pull one of these down, and let's talk about how this is going to work. So let's pretend that Heracles has come here and he wants to recruit Pegasus to be part of Athena's army. Perhaps he wants to use Pegasus as a mount, or perhaps he wants to allow Pegasus to do its own thing and be its own hero. You'll notice that it does have stats there, and it has the bonus that you happen to get if he's being used as a mount there. You'll also note that Pegasus is swift. The way that you're going to recruit the epic hero is you're going to look at this stat right here. This is the cunning stat. And in this case, Heracles is going to be able to roll 4 dice, and they're simply trying to match the number of successes up there. And you'll see, because our Heracles is not favored by the gods, then Heracles would have failed. But let's pretend that he succeeded like that. Now, this will mean that not only will the card here come and either be placed here as its own minion, in which case monster minion token, and place it right there where it was recruited. You'll note that these monsters up here will always appear at the island they were recruited on. Or, in the case of the Pegasus, it could also be placed on someone as a mount, and just for kicks, we'll place it there on Heracles as a mount. Then finally, because Athena has recruited an epic minion, they would receive a single glory point. So what you'll see is, if you have killed a minion, you'll earn 1 glory. If you defeat a champion, you'll earn 2 glory. If you defeat a minion by 3 or more, you slaughtered them, you will earn 2 glory, and you will earn glory for every epic hero or monster that you are able to recruit. Then once that's done, you move into the dusk phase. And in the dusk phase, that is where these locations here are going to come into play. As you can see on each one, it has a number, and that's the amount of glory you're going to get for controlling that area. And control is very simple. You will simply add up the number of your minions that you have in a location, and if you have more than the opponent, you will get the points. So in this case, Artemis would gain 2 points. However, if it was tied, no one would receive the points. However, if it was tied but one player had a champion there, the player with the champion would gain the points. So what that means is if we had something like this at the end of the day, we would have Artemis gaining 2 points, and we would have Athena gaining 3 points. Then after that, you would make sure everyone discards down to a maximum hand size of 3. Then you're able to discard any unwanted cards here to Hades, like so, and then you can draw a new card from the Fates deck to replace what it is that you have discarded. Then from there we move into daybreak of the next day, which if you recall means you're going to move this over. You're going to pass the first player token, you'll be refilling the islands, and then you'll be seeing if anyone has earned Zeus's pity. Now this was something I didn't mention at the beginning because I didn't want to cause any confusion. And what that means is if anybody is more than 5 glory points behind the other, so for example, say we were here, Athena would be more than 5 points behind Artemis, in which case they would be awarded a Zeus's pity card. And as you can see, these cards here are particularly powerful. Here we have one that's an act of the gods. Here we have another one that is its own epic hero. And as you can see, there is a whole variety of different things that these cards may be able to do. And if you're thinking this sounds like a catch-up mechanic, you are absolutely right. The Zeus's pity cards are exceedingly powerful and are a very good way to get yourself back into the game if you find yourself behind. Then at the end of the 5th day, after the final glory tally has been totaled, whoever has the most will be declared the winner and will have the city dedicated in their name. So there you have it, folks. That's how you play the core game of Kleos. Now, if you're interested in learning how to play the solo game, then keep watching and we'll go through that as well. Let's talk about how the solo mode works. And what you'll see here is I've kind of removed just about everything I have left. The Heracles miniature here representing Athena, though I have removed Athena's board just to kind of keep everything looking a little bit cleaner because the focus of this is going to be on how the solo AI works, though I will need some of the figures here to go through all the different examples of things that might happen. So what we have is we have obviously our Atalanta, which is part of our Artemis deck here. We have our Artemis Divine deck, and we have our different meeples here. And there is one slight difference in the setup. What you do have to make sure that you do is you have to go through the Epic Minion deck, and you have to remove both Morpheus and Eros. And then in the Zeus's Pity deck, you have to go through and remove Zeus's Wrath. These are cards that you simply do not use when you're playing against the AI. Now, the next thing that's important to note is each of the different AIs you're playing against will have their own unique differences. And so as I go through and as I'm talking about different things, I will be putting up on the screen the images from the solo AI rules, but for the setup and what I'm showing here, I will be showing you Artemis's specific setup. The last thing that you're going to need is some way to track Olympian favor points. For me, I simply have a 10-sided die that I'll be using, and I'm just going to set that right here on the board so we can track that easily, and you're going to start it out as set to 0. Now, when you're playing against an AI, the player will always go first, and you will actually never transfer the first player token to the AI, so that will always be stuck with you. After you do your play phase, you will do the AI's play phase. And you'll notice that the AI does not actually have a hand of cards. Rather, what they will do is they will simply play the top 4 cards from the Fates deck, though depending on the difficulty you want, this may be more or less. And as I said, each of the different gods has a slightly different setup in the way the game is played. Now for Artemis, you're going to start with certain cards actually already out in play on the board. And so what you're going to have is you're going to start out with your champion Atalanta mounted on a griffin to start. And in addition to that, you will start with the Golden Hind out as the minion slot 1, and you will start with the Hounds of Artemis in minion spot 2. So then what's going to happen is the AI will play the top 4 cards from the Fates deck. And so we'll flip over the first one, and we see we have a minion, the Cyclops. And so since it is not a monstrous offering or a heroic mount, we will take it and we'll put it in the first available minion spot, which is number 3. And there we have the number 3 right there. And we play the next one, which is a Hoplite Legend. Again, not a heroic mount or a monstrous offering, so we would put that there in the number 4 spot, like so. Now the next one is where it gets interesting. So since the Manticore is a heroic mount, we would take this and we would offer it as a mount to the strongest available hero. In this case, the Hoplite Legend is now riding the Manticore. And I should point out here that had it been a monstrous offering, it would have been offered to the strongest, as determined by the chart you see on the screen, monster available to the AI. Then for the fourth card, we have a cursed, marked by the gods. And just like we looked at that chart to determine the strongest hero, we'll do the same to determine the strongest of the enemy. And we'll take that, and that curse will be placed on the player's strongest character possible. Then once that's done, we would draw and play the top card of the Divine deck, which in this case is the Hounds of Artemis. And since the Hounds of Artemis is neither a heroic mount nor a monstrous offering, and all the spots are filled, then it gets placed into Hades. Anytime the AI cannot actually play a card, it goes into Hades, and they tick up their Olympian advantage point by 1. Each of the different gods has a different type of advantage. In Artemis's case, every time it gets up to 2, then she's able to use 2 points, going back down to 0, and then they get to take an extra action according to their personal script, and I will explain that in just a minute. But I may have drawn something like this in Act of the Gods, the Divine Arrow. And the Divine Arrow is an attack card allowing you to roll 7 godly dice. And in this case, again, you're going to refer to the script for the specific AI, and it tells us here that it will target the strongest hero, again, using that chart that I've shown you a few times, and then we turn the card into Hades, but since it was played, we do not tick up the Olympian advantage. All right, so now let's move into the action phase. And as you can imagine, this is where you are going to be moving around all of the different minions and the champion for the AI. Now, I will say that each of the different gods has a slightly different script for exactly what it is that they're going to do and how they operate, but there are a few rules that are kind of universal. One is minions are not going to attack anything unless they have at least 6 dice. If they don't have 6 dice, they're not going to attack. Also, minions will always avoid attacks of opportunity if possible. So let's look at our Golden Hind, our number 1. It is swift, meaning it can move 2 spaces on its turn on its first move, and it is not going to want to go and make an attack because it has an attack value of 0. So since it's right here, it has the option where it could try to go 1, 2, going here. However, that would provoke an attack of opportunity, so instead it will go 1, 2 this way instead. Additionally, as I said, things are only going to attack when they're going to be rolling up to 6 dice. Now that can create a situation in which you have something like this right here. And we'll just pretend this minion right here does not have 6 attack, and so in this case, the minion will actually just stay here and do nothing as it holds on to this zone right here, trying to earn those glory points at the end of the day. And I'll go ahead and kind of operate through some of the script for Artemis just so you can kind of have an idea of how it might work. And so we'll start out with Atalanta here. And we're going to just pretend that right here there is a minion of some sort. It doesn't really matter what it is. And Atalanta's script says she's going to move towards the strongest non-champion minion. So if Heracles was right here, then she will move 1, 2 to here. She's moving 2 because she currently has a mount that makes her swift. Then when she would get there, she would then attack that minion. Now the same thing would happen if the minion was out there. Atalanta, we'll assume that she's right here, she would make her way towards the minion up there. So she would go 1, 2, and then her next action, she would move herself right there. And then the next round, should that minion still be there, she would start out by attacking that minion. Now, the reason that she operates in that way is because she has the Golden Hind in her control. If the Golden Hind was not under her control because it had been defeated or whatever it may be, her script is a little bit different. In this case, instead of attacking the strongest minion, she would go after the weakest minion. And I will also point out that she would also, if she has the favor of the gods, she would act as if she does have the Golden Hind under her control. So, in this case, we'll pretend that there's these 2 out here, and we'll say that this one right here is the weaker of the two. She would move here and attack there. And the same thing would happen if they were both all the way out there. And again, assuming that our Manticore meeple is the weaker, she would move on her movement 1 and 2 because she does not have the favor of the gods or the Golden Hind in play. And then next turn she would attack over there, or if that 2 movement like that got her there, then she would attack. Then the Hounds of Artemis, which are here, What they want to do is they're going to simply start out by attacking the weakest minion at its location. So in this case, again, we'll just pretend that this is the weaker of the two. The Hounds of Artemis would attack right there. However, it is possible that there are epic minions out on the board. So in that case, they would start out and they would want to first attack the weakest epic minion available. Then if there is no epic minion available, then they would attack the weakest basic minion available. And if there were no minions in the same location as the Hounds of Artemis, then they would simply move towards the weakest minion that they can get to of the opponent, like so. And if they were not in range, then they would move towards the city location based on the priority of city locations that you can see right now. Then all of the basic minions are going to operate in that same way. If they are on a location with another minion that have at least 6 attack, then they will attack. If they do not have 6 attack and they are not on a location that they want to hold, then they will, in that case, risk the attack of opportunity, moving away, trying to get to the location that they're going to. And the last thing that needs to be noted is when you're operating the minions, you're going to activate minions that are on Artemis's temple first, and then you'll go left to right across the board. And then you're going to simply play through the game. You'll play through all 5 days. All of the scoring is done exactly the same throughout the game, and at the end of the game, whoever has a higher glory score will be determined the winner. There you have it, folks. That is how to play the solo variant of Kleos. Again, as a reminder, I've only given you the basic information about how it works and showed you how Artemis particularly works. Each of the gods has its own different script, its different Olympian advantage, and differences with how the different minions may interact with each different god. So, as always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.